Daddy, please don't sign that. Juan Daniel's pen stopped half an inch above the contract. The boardroom, which had been holding its breath through 40 minutes of negotiation, went completely silent. Every lawyer, every executive, every assistant in that room turned to look at the small voice that had just come from the corner. My friends and I play there every day, the little girl said. Daniel looked up slowly, pen still frozen in the air, utterly confused about why his housekeeper's daughter had just called him daddy in front of 6 members of his board and the entire legal team for a $400 million acquisition. To understand how a 5-year-old ended up in that boardroom at all, you have to go back 3 months, to the day Daniel's longtime housekeeper collapsed in his kitchen and was rushed to the hospital, and the agency sent a replacement on 2 days' notice. Her name was Adiz. She showed up at the gate of Daniel's Atlanta estate with a single suitcase and a small girl holding her hand, both of them dressed neatly despite the early hour, both of them carrying the specific tired dignity of people who had learned to look composed no matter what was actually happening underneath. Sir, this is my daughter Falik, Adiz said, a little nervously once she was shown into the foyer. Her school is on a short break and I had no one to leave her with. I promise she'll be no trouble, she'll stay quiet. Daniel looked at the little girl, 5 years old, maybe 6, with 2 short braids and a serious, watchful face that seemed older than the rest of her. Keep her out of my office, he said, not unkindly but not warmly either. In his experience, children were noise, mess, and distraction, and he had built an entire life specifically engineered to avoid all three. He walked off without asking the girl her name. As he turned the corner, he caught the edge of her expression in his peripheral vision, not hurt, not offended, just a plain, open smile, the kind he hadn't seen directed at him in longer than he could remember. Most smiles in his world were transactions. This one wasn't selling him anything. He didn't think about it again. Not consciously anyway. The weeks that followed had a quiet rhythm to them. Adiz worked with the kind of careful thoroughness that made the house feel different, not just clean, but cared for, the way a place feels when someone is actually paying attention to it rather than simply maintaining it. Falik, true to her mother's promise, stayed mostly out of sight. But mostly out of sight for a 5-year-old still meant evidence appeared in unexpected places. Drawings left on the kitchen floor, stick figure families holding hands under Crayon suns. A small handprint gone slightly purple on the hood of Daniel's car, which Adiz discovered with horror one morning and immediately tried to scrub off with her sleeve. I'm so sorry, sir, she said, mortified. Falik didn't mean to. I'll have it cleaned properly today, I promise. It's fine, Daniel said. Adiz looked at him like he'd spoken in a different language. The cold, exacting man she'd heard about from the agency did not sound like someone who'd let a child's handprint sit on a car worth more than most houses. He said it again a few days later, when crayon flowers appeared on the hallway wall by the kitchen. It's fine. It was not, strictly speaking, fine, but something in him had quietly decided he didn't actually mind, and he didn't examine that decision too closely because examining it felt like it might undo it. He began coming home earlier. Not dramatically, 15 minutes here, half an hour there, the kind of shift so gradual that he barely registered making it until one evening he caught himself checking the time at 5:40 and thinking, with mild surprise, that he should probably head out if he wanted to be home before Falik's bedtime. He didn't examine that either. One evening, walking past the kitchen, he found her sitting cross-legged on the floor near the coffee machine, an entire spread of paper covering the tile, fully absorbed in whatever she was drawing. Who taught you to draw? He asked, surprising himself by speaking at all. Falik looked up, delighted by the question. My mom, she said proudly. She's really good. I can teach you if you want. From across the kitchen, Adiz gave a small, embarrassed smile and kept working. Daniel almost laughed. Your name is Falik, right? She tilted her head. How do you know that? I never told you. I've heard your mother say it. He leaned against the counter. And you should be in serious trouble for the crayon situation on my car and my hallway wall. Falik's face dropped instantly, fear flickering across it. However, Daniel continued, if you promise to draw something new for me every single day, I'll consider us even. She brightened immediately, then, after a beat of careful 5-year-old negotiation, nodded. Okay, deal. And that was, improbably, how an entire friendship began, built on the smallest possible terms, between a man who had spent years protecting himself from exactly this kind of attachment and a child who had no idea what walls she was quietly climbing over. From then on, Follick spent her afternoons on the floor of Daniel's office, drawing quietly in the corner while he worked behind his desk. He found himself glancing down at her papers more than he meant to, smiling at things: a son with a crooked smile, a dog 3 times the size of the house beside it, without realizing his face was doing it. For the first time in longer than he wanted to think about, his office did not feel like a vault. It felt like a room someone actually wanted to be in. He started working from home more. He told himself it was efficiency. It was not efficiency. The trouble started on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon with Follick on the office floor and a folder of site photographs spread across Daniel's desk during a call with his land acquisitions team. "Everything's prepped on our end," his partner Marcus said, voice crackling through the speaker. "Once the contract's signed, demolition crews can be on site within the month." "And the residents?" Daniel asked, more out of procedural habit than real concern. "Notice period expired 6 weeks ago," Marcus said. "Legally, we're clear to proceed whenever you're ready." Follick in the corner had gone very still, her crayon motionless against the page. She didn't say anything. She kept her head down, the careful, deliberate stillness of a child who has just heard something she doesn't fully understand but knows instinctively is important. When the call ended and Daniel stepped out to discuss logistics with his legal team in the hallway, Follick set down her crayon and crept toward the desk. The folder was still open. She looked at the photographs inside: rows of modest houses, a corner store with a faded awning, a dusty patch of field with a worn soccer ball sitting in the grass, a single huge oak tree at the edge of it. Her stomach dropped. She knew that field, she knew that tree. She had climbed it with Marcus from down the street and Aisha from 2 doors over just last weekend, before her mother started this job, back when they still lived 3 streets from there before moving into Daniel's staff quarters for the contract period. This was her old neighborhood. This was where her friends still lived. Footsteps in the hallway. Follick scrambled back to the corner and grabbed her crayon just as the door opened. Daniel walked back in with his legal team, and right behind them Adiz, who had been asked to bring in refreshments for the closing meeting and was now setting a tray down with careful, practiced hands, completely unaware of what her daughter had just seen. Daniel sat at his desk. He picked up the pen. The room held its collective breath, the way rooms do at the precise moment something irreversible is about to happen. He leaned forward. "Daddy, please don't sign that." The pen froze in the air. Every head in the room turned toward the small voice in the corner. "My friends and I play there every day," Follick said again, louder this time, her small voice carrying further than anyone expected. One of the lawyers leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "Did she just call him?" Adiz's hand flew to her mouth. "Follick," she said, mortified, already crossing the room. "Sir, I am so sorry, she didn't mean." Daniel raised a hand and Adiz stopped mid-step. He looked down at the pen still hovering over the contract, then back at Follick. "You live there?" he asked quietly. Follick nodded, her eyes wide but steady. "That's our old house. My friends still live there. We play by the big tree near the field." For the first time since the meeting had started, Daniel actually looked at the photographs clipped to the contract, really looked, the way you look at something for the first time instead of the 100th. He had seen thousands of property folders in his career: land, numbers, projected returns. He had trained himself deliberately over many years never to see anything else in them. But now, looking at that worn soccer ball sitting in the grass beneath the oak tree, he could picture Follick exactly where she said she'd been: running, laughing, climbing that tree with friends whose names he would never have known to ask about if she hadn't been sitting in the corner of his office with a crayon in her hand. The room stayed silent, waiting. Slowly, Daniel set the pen down. "I need to see this place," he said, "myself before anything is signed." Marcus frowned. "The demolition crews are already scheduled for." "Then they'll wait," Daniel said. "No signature today." That evening he asked Adiz and Follick to take him there. Adiz hesitated at the door of his car. "Sir, it's not really the kind of place someone like you would normally go." "That's exactly why I should," Daniel said. When they arrived, the street was alive in a way Daniel's own neighborhood never was. Kids chasing each other across a dusty field, neighbors sitting out on porch steps trading stories in the cooling evening air, somebody's radio playing from an open window down the block. The moment Falik stepped out of the car, a group of children spotted her and shouted her name, and she took off running toward them without a backward glance, instantly absorbed into the kind of unfiltered joy Daniel had not seen on a child's face in any of the manicured private school playgrounds his board members' kids attended. He stood at the edge of the field and watched. A worn soccer ball rolled toward his polished shoes. He bent down, picked it up, and kicked it back toward the boy who'd lost it. The kids cheered like he'd done something remarkable. He looked around the cracked sidewalks, the houses that needed real work, the field that was nothing more than packed dirt and patchy grass. And he understood with the specific clarity that arrives only when you've stopped protecting yourself from feeling something, that this was not a parcel of land waiting for a number to be attached to it. It was someone's entire world. It was Falik's entire world, the one she'd been carrying quietly inside her this whole time while she sat in the corner of his office drawing crooked suns and oversized dogs, never once telling him what was actually at stake until the exact moment it mattered most. His partners gathered the next morning expecting a signature. Instead, Daniel pushed the contract aside. "We're not demolishing it," he said. Marcus stared at him. "We've already committed millions to this site plan." "Then we'll commit millions somewhere else," Daniel said. "We're not tearing that neighborhood down, we're rebuilding it. New roads, a real playground, renovated housing, proper drainage so it doesn't flood every spring, whatever it actually needs." "Why?" one of the other partners asked, genuinely baffled. "Would we spend that kind of money improving land instead of just developing it?" Daniel glanced toward the corner of his office, where Falik sat exactly where she always did, Crayon moving steadily across a fresh sheet of paper, utterly unaware that she had just redirected $400 million with one sentence spoken at exactly the right moment. "Because a company that only knows how to tear things down," Daniel said, "isn't actually building anything at all." Months later, the neighborhood looked different. The dusty field had become a real playground with proper equipment and soft rubber matting under the swings. The houses had been repaired, not replaced, kept exactly as they were, just made whole. The roads were smooth. The drainage worked. The big oak tree was still standing, exactly where it had always been, now with a small bench built carefully around its base. One afternoon, back in Daniel's office, Falik walked up to his desk and proudly held out her newest drawing. It showed a house, a playground, children running, and three figures standing together in front of it all, holding hands, a man, a woman, and a small girl between them. At the top, in her careful 5-year-old handwriting, she had written 3 words. "My family." Daniel looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then he looked up at Falik, waiting hopefully for his reaction, and past her at Adiz in the doorway, who had stopped to watch and hadn't realized yet that she was witnessing the exact moment everything in this house had finally, quietly, become real. He smiled, not the careful, managed smile he gave business partners, but the plain, open, kind Falik had given him on her very first day, the one that wasn't selling anyone anything at all. "It's perfect," he said. And it was. Drop a yellow heart for Falik, who spoke up for the people she loved when it mattered most. Drop a yellow heart for Adiz, who never once asked for anything and was given everything anyway. Drop a yellow heart for Daniel, who learned that some of the most important deals in life have nothing to do with money. Drop your city and the time where you are right now. Subscribe for more Afro Korean love stories. This one is only the beginning.